always love me. Say you'll always love me. Say all the cows and fiddle the cow. And I took my plane down the runway. I got down to that one and I took off up in the sky and I flew that plane up higher and higher. I was taking that plane.
One of the early reviews we got in Baltimore is Split Britches. We remember the first and the last line of that review.
Even Shakespeare wouldn't...
Not even Shakespeare, you know, as talented as he is,
put 3 women on a stage for an hour without a man.
And think it could hold our attention.
This review that we got, said basically that nothing happened.
The last line was, "Call me a Republican, make my day."
This is a photograph.
The split britches are, there's a garment that was worn by women out in the country.
So they would just stand there and open their pants and pee standing up.
I started thinking about how I'd like to make this piece called Split Britches. And so we started making that piece at the exact same time that we also started organizing the festival. We made the first performance ever at the very first WOW Festival.
That was the first show that she did when we left Spiderwoman.
Peggy and I were starting to want to make more lesbian-focused material.
Lois always wanted to write about her 3 relatives who lived in the Blue Ridge Mountains behind her house in Virginia.
So it became a portrait of these 3 women in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, but the detail of those portraits had a lot of other family members from people who'd worked on the show.
At that time, Nadja Bay was in it. She was a black woman from Harlem.
Kathy Goldner, Nadja Bay, Pam Verge, Peggy, and myself, we all worked on it. And then we pulled it back and started rewriting it for 3 people, myself and Peggy and one other. So we approached Deb Margolin.
When Peggy and Lois decided to work on this piece, they had a scriptwriter who ran away.
Ntozake Shange's sister, who was a friend of Lois, was going to write it for us.
Right when we were about to put something together to show for the festival, the playwright abandoned us.
The show was going to open in 3 weeks, and she disappeared.
So I wrote some stuff for them. Next thing I know, I'm in this theater company.
It's the same flies every afternoon. I recognize them.
The 3 of us on stage, we looked mighty weird together. You've got this little, femme from Roanoke with the red hair and the turned-up nose, this butch lesbian from South Boston, who glued one of her front teeth on with crazy glue, like the cap fell off and she glued it on. It's been there for like 50 years. And then you have some weird Jew from the suburbs. Terrific. It was great.
My grandma died. Grandma died and she's laying upstairs on my bed on top of all of my coupons.
There are 3 characters in Split Britches, Cora, Della, and Emma. Cora was kind of a little mental.
She was learning disabled, probably. That's what we would say now.
Something was off about her, but she was kind of sexy and kind of manipulative.
One time, that time in the wintertime when I was sitting over there by that window, that one that's got them blue bottles on it, and I was looking out the window, and, well, there was a man. He came and he was looking in at me, Emma. He was smiling at me. He wanted to kiss me.
The inspiration behind that story was an actual story that Peggy's mom told her, that this man was trying to ruin her reputation by coming to her window when it had snowed and leaving his footprints, so everybody in the neighborhood would know he had come to peep in on her.
I don't want nobody to think nothing bad about me, Emma, so I put on Blanche's boots and I put on my coat and I went out there. I went right out there and I stepped on them footprints. I stepped all over them footprints.
It was part of my desire to give her a kind of sexuality, to let it be known that although naive, she still kind of had this kind of sexual thing or this sexual imagination.
Emma, a character I ended up playing, was 87 years old and senile.
I was an old blind turkey. Yeah, I know because I saw him. Come to Thanksgiving one time and the cook, he come after him with a knife, But they killed him when they opened him up.
As a person, I've always been disappointed that I only look like one thing, because I'm many things. I think that's how Emma thought of herself. You know, she thought of herself as this old blind turkey trying to avoid the knife. And then at the end, there's that image of the turkey being cut open, but inside that turkey is a whole life. Place to live with food.
There was a table with bread, wine. We had 50 turkeys, 200 country hens.
There's a running chorus, really, through the piece that talks about the cow is sick.
We just started talking as these people we'd been being. And all that came out was really very little bit like, the cow's sick. It doesn't look sick to me. Well, that's not the cow.
The cow's sick. It don't look sick to me.
That's not the cow.
You know.
The cow is sick. The cow is sick. Emma.
The cow is sick.
Somebody got to go for help.
I'll
go.
I'll go.
Emma, you can't go. You fall down and break yourself.
I'll go.
Cora, you can't go. You can't find your way in the day. How are you going to find your way at night? I'll go. Emma, you stay here. Cora, you go with me.
You want me to stay here alone?
And then if one goes, they'll have to go by themselves. But if two go, then one would be left by themselves. So they all three decide to go. And it's the middle of the night. Now this really happened. My mom and dad told the story of like being awakened at 3 a.m. and going to the door. And the three of them, in all of their clothes and bonnets and a lantern, they had hiked over the hill to get help for the cow.
Let's go, Cora.
Just like Mama. Robin, just scared of it, sick and scared of it ain't sick. If it ain't sick, you're scared it's gonna get sick. And if it is sick, you're scared it's gonna die. Oh, and I don't know why you're so scared it's gonna die. Because everything is gonna die.
The show was opening Monday. It was a Monday night show because that's when people are dark, so they give a bunch of weird girls a theater. That Thursday, Lois tracked me down.
We approached her and said, Deb, we need some help.
She's like, have you written anything? Oh, sure, don't worry, it's all done. This is a big lie.
And she came back with the Fire in the Pocket monologue. It just resonated with me because to me it felt like that was Della.
Would you run right over?
Lois's dad would say, she was so tough, not a blade of grass ever grew in her grave.
Whenever Lois interviewed people about Della, they would say she was tall. Well, she was handsome.
In her youth, Della Mae was a handsome woman. Stylish dressing. She had a job in town. She drove a horse and buggy to and from her home, which was also intimate. Now, I heard it was an unfortunate love affair that brought her back to the farm.
Della, who was the older sister, she became the man, as it were. That's what a lot of people called her. Oh, she was the man of the farm.
With their philosophy that we fill in the blank between ourselves and our characters with aspects of our own lives, they concluded, no doubt correctly, that Della was a lesbian.
My family used to say, oh, we think she was in love once, but she was disappointed in love. And that she was so disappointed in love, she had to go off somewhere to, Warm Springs and recover, and almost had a nervous breakdown.
Thinking about Della's character, I was moved by the idea of a woman in the 1800s in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia who was lesbian and didn't even have a vocabulary for her feelings and her desires.
That's familiar narrative for those of us who have had to come out in difficult circumstances. So I just thought that fire in her pocket was a beautiful metaphor.
I don't think there were any like leather bars or gay bars in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia in 1860 that Della could have gone to. And I wrote a monologue for her that honored the grief and yearning of a woman with desires for which there was no language. Fire ain't just a thing, it's a person. I mean, it ain't a person, it's a living thing. Fire got a mind of its own. Fires think, they got purposes. I seen a farmhouse burn down, all the cows and the chickens, and there was big black birds flying upside down next to that fire. And that fire held them there by a string to their wings in order to scare all the animals to death. I seen a chicken fall over, and the fire went up, ate its whole body, and burped out big white smoke. I heard dogs barking, but there wasn't no dogs. I got fire inside of me. I could feel it, but you can't see it. And that makes me be a person with a secret. I could feel it in my eyes. I could feel it in
my chest, and I can feel it in other places.
Della Mae lived for 15 years alone on that farm. And then she finally sold it to a stranger. And the very next Halloween, that farmhouse burned down.
I feel like that farm, and dry, and that fire can make ashes out of me if I ain't careful. One time, I had fire in my pocket. I put my hand in my pocket, and I pulled it out real quick, and I said, why'd I do that? And I looked in my pocket, and there was the fire looking up at me, just cute and sweet, just like a pretty girl. That ain't even funny, Della. Then it starts to hurt, and it could kill you. So you got to put it out. You got to beat it. You got to put it out. Emma, Cora!
She spent the rest of her years in a rooming house in town. And in 1974, Della Mae was buried right between Cora Jane and Emma Gay. And to this day, not a blade of grass is growing on her grave.
Sometimes I think the fire waits till the whole world is bored, and then it comes along to entertain us. Only it hurts to laugh. Do you know that by the time the men got to that farmhouse, it was burned down right flat to the ground. There was nothing left. It's fire steals the land for real.
The strange thing is, when we did the performance, we ended up taking it to Virginia, and we did it as a part of the celebration for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. People would come up to Peggy, who knew Della, afterwards at the reception and say, oh, you're just like Della. You're tall.
The New York Post came and reviewed that show. And there was a headline that said, this is a show with fire in its pocket.
She said it was like a Walker Evans photo, and if you could look beyond that, you'd see something else. If you could look beyond that, you'd see something else. It was so affirming. That kept us going. That gave us the courage to keep going.
Nobody had ever seen anything quite like it. People loved it.
One of the beautiful things about studying theater with Peggy and Lois was focusing not on what other people would think, but on what we wanted to say. I realized that fiction is the redistribution of autobiography, and that we only have ourselves and we are enough. We have ourselves, our imagination, our experience, what we've eavesdropped, what we've imagined, what we've had directly, what people we know have gone through. We have ourselves and we are enough.
Mean to see you. Is this my fault? Is this my fault?
I already told you, the highlight of my steamboating career was serving water to Helen Hayes during the bingo game.
When I'm inside you, I remember every one of my past lives. I remember loving you as a holy chorus. I remember loving you in a faraway island. There is no need to worry.
WOW was a place where the voice, whatever your voice was, could come out.
It was a radical feminist act to stand on stage.
There were women from everywhere that shared a certain sensibility.
And it's really like, do your dream, girl. I'm going to help you do your dream, and then you or someone else will help me make my dream come true.
This was the power of Split Britches and the power of WOW. It was a theater of desire. You do what you want.
I mean, it was part of our politics is that we felt like everybody could make art. All of us felt like our work couldn't be done anyplace else. And it wasn't just like community-based theater, it was like you created community through making theater.
The learning part of WOW, what a lot of people learned from it was Lois's teaching. Me and her sort of mentored a lot of people.
There was no like processing. There was no talk back about like, wow, maybe we should have done this show differently or that scene. You're working, and you learn through working.
And we'd just say, okay, go write something now, get up and perform it.
Peggy and Lois, in their own world, and Carmelita in her world and in my world, had all sort of like had some experience with drag theater.
That's how I learned theater, is through Hot Peaches.
It just wasn't about just like being big and lots of eye makeup and big hair and all of that. It was a real style of acting. And within that style, they, you know, some of these really gifted performers could do the full range of something that was over the top to something that was nuanced and subtle and small.
She is gone, they say. She doesn't matter. All her songs, they say, are idle chatter.
When you perform with drag queens, you learn very quickly. You make sure you're loud enough. You make sure you're standing in front of them. You make sure you have a glittery thing on. You make sure you hold the interest of the audience. You learn that very quickly from drag queens.
Sharon Jane came to WOW, the old WOW on 11th Street, as a folk singer. She, with her mandolin, she would do these shows of her songs.
Because I do come to theater as a storyteller. It's my core mode of operating as a storyteller or as a songwriter.
Then she got this idea to write a show about her time working on a steamboat in the Mississippi River.
Claudia liked steamboating. I let him know I liked it a lot, but there were often too many men in one place, and more aggressive men than I was used to.
Bev Bronson, genius designer, created this environment. It was a steamboat, but you were sort of inside and outside the steamboat.
The audience was like here. It was the theater was it was set the long way, so the windows were over here. The galley was like over here in the corner up on a stage, and then there was like a walkway that was sort of like as if you were kind of looking over with like it would have been like the railing of the boat. So the audience was like in the water.
Very ambitious in with limited resources and just a lot of, gumption.
We used to go out 5-6 mornings a week, driving out into the country looking for stuff for the shop, and then we'd often see something that would inspire the set.
Because I spent so much time working in the galley, my strongest memories of steamboating in the late 1970s center around food. Laura and Sally were constantly making breakfast, racing around in search of ingredients that were never there. Sally would be cursing the chef, the sous chef, dishwashers, everybody.
There was the galley, which was the kitchen. So Gabrielle and Harriet cooked a meal live during every show.
So that was very fun to just kind of smell. She usually made pasta. And there were so many people in the cast.
It was hard to get people to come see shows. It still is, hard to fill. And Sharon Jane always would have gigantic casts. So 9 times out of 10, there was way more people on stage than there was in the audience.
Terry Dane was in it. Gabrielle was in it. Betsy Crenshaw, I believe, was in it. I think Babs was in it. So it was totally fun, crazy, a lot of cast.
Mo and I had this scene where we were like standing on the part where we were like looking over the railing and stuff, and
we're really pondering something. We're really having a philosophical chat, looking at the water.
One of us messed up our lines, and then started to laugh. Like
the show, as I remember, kind of ground to a halt because we could not stop laughing.
So to cover that I was laughing, I leaned over the railing like this, and then my hat fell off into what would have been the water.
Why do they have to put their hands all over everything? Shit. Now you're in trouble.
Both of us just cracked up. We could not stop laughing.
I peed my pants.
Not my most professional moment, but, you know, I hope those 25 people that saw the show that night, you know, got a little something out of it.
And Babs actually saved us, because Babs was our, now I recall, Babs was our boss, and she was really, like, supposedly, like, kind of a hard ass, and she saw that we were out there and completely out of control, like, could not get it together, so she came out like, what are you two doing? Get back to work! It's, like, completely impromptu.
Wow. It was the mistakes that were the most interesting piece. I found so much freedom in that. There was just an edge of play that really was important.
You know, it's hard to say now. Like, I don't think we were not trying to be men. It's like this, it's another kind of drag.
It was very gender-bended.
Terry and I, as the wisecracking deckhands, were, you know, we basically looked like ourselves.
But it wasn't about being queer, it was about taking the territory back.
So it's interesting, again, in the gender presentation, like butch versus drag, and just, you know, trans-masculine, like how that plays out.
You got to live, so beware of kings, and what kings can give.
It was beautifully told in the way that only Sharon Jane can do. It's really like delicate, and she's telling some story and playing the mandolin, and then she gets there, you know, in a kind of sometimes unexpected little jump back to either something she said before or to the next thing, and she's like masterful. She is masterful at that.
It's a lucky life. You got to live, so beware of kings and what kings can give.
Don't move, you look fabulous. You look beautiful slowly. Don't move, baby. Don't move, honey. In the name of civilization.
It's not that easy to arrive to a place that you're going to be the only woman of color. Well, I was pretty much all white women at the time.
And that was shocking for me, because the first thing that I love about New York, coming from a different country, Mexico, was that in my building or in the subway train, you have like 10 nationalities. And there you come here to a place with theater, which is only 2 Latin, one that doesn't perform or write, me. And that's it, no woman of color, you know, like New York, come on.
The idea that I had was to create a women of color cabaret. At the beginning it was the women's cabaret, and it was called the service economy vaudeville.
I'm going to tell you a little story about how it is to be a black woman in this society. It's called Looking Through a Black Woman's Eyes.
I was doing the cabaret with my friend Nora.
I have the fortune to meet Susanna. Her work was amazing. Very political, very strong, very honest.
Nora was like very patient, talking to people. Like, no, we are producing. Don't worry about it. We're in charge. With her little cigarette. Immediately, the thing started to change. Like, more women of color were coming to the meetings, and then Neonaway Green and Hanifa took over, and they continue with Rivers of Honey.
We needed to create rivers because WOW was white as hell. From the jump, we were clear that we wanted women of color to come in here and create space so that, you know, then another woman of color can come in here and see a reflection of herself and know that this space too was for us.
Because Yanaway
you and I were playing in the sandbox of Rivers of Honey, doing what we were doing, right? It was a meeting in Jersey. So it was a youth caucus. It was mostly brothers there, right? You know, and we were the only, you know, women in the room. So when we were on our way back, we created these masculine archetypes, kind of making fun off of this experience. And this is the first scene we created for Bloom.
Oh, wake up, man. Come on, man. Time to get the meeting started.
Where we at? Leading that front lawn.
And so we created this meeting of the front lawn. And we just started riffing in these characters. And the masculine archetypes we created was oak tree.
Which was the old statesman type of character. He was so scared and old and paranoid that they were cutting him down. They cut off my branches again. They cut me down.
What they talking about doing?
They ain't talking about cutting me down.
Oh, they can't cut you down. man, why they talking about cutting you down though?
They say I too shaded.
And then we had Blade of Grass.
Young, like, let's kill all the whiteys.
And Blade was mad for the same reasons because they kept cutting him too.
Since when something's been gone, they been cutting me.
Ain't you grass?
I know, man, but they be cutting me. They cut me like 2-3 times a week. They cut me. They just keep cutting me and cutting me and cutting me. Can't even get tall enough to get my mac on with the Marigold sisters. They keep dissing me. They say I'm too short.
Between me, Demia, and Yanaway, we played like 3 to 4 characters each. And then it was more characters on top of that.
Kimbali was the first
Rose.
Wind, Rose.
Stephanie was the first Miss Hummingbird.
Lisa Jessie Peterson was the first Busy Bee.
I'm going to be back, though, and we're going to have a couple of some tulip nectar. I'm going to bring you some royal jelly from the queen, girl. Nice.
What it wound up becoming was a parallel world between what's happening in the front lawn. So we have, you know, the tree and the rock and the blade of grass and the dandelions and the violet and the rose and sunflower and all them. But then it was parallel to the world of these 3 young girls who we see grow up over time. And this is the patch of area that they played in.
Jamel, what? You coming outside?
I'm reading.
What you reading?
It's a really good book about a little girl called The Bluest Eye.
You don't got no blue eyes, girl. Come outside and
As you know, Elsie, the meeting of the front lawn is coming up and there are some issues that need to be addressed. I'm here to propose that I represent the flowers at that meeting.
That's right.
And so this is the meeting of the front lawn.
Yeah.
And then so we just talking about what we upset about. And along comes Sally Dandelion, who wants to add some stuff on the agenda that needs to be handled in the, you know, the meeting of the front lawn. And so Oak and Blade offend her by, you know, basically saying, what are you doing here? Well, who are you representing?
You ain't even a flower.
And she goes off.
You know what, Oak? I would expect this kind of nonsense from that youngin' over there, but I expected more from you than this flower bed lawn protocol stuff. I've been on this front lawn longer than most of the flowers in the bed. Everybody coming to me, taking my leaves to make their tea. The human females for their breast milk. The drunk ones to clean out their livers. Why, I remember you coming to me not too long ago for some constipation. Now, I might not get a pruning every week, but ain't I a flower? I grow with a good earth woman too. Ain't I a flower? I lift my face up into the sun come springtime. Ain't I a flower?
We walked into this joint as black women and didn't see not a nigga in sight. But instead of kind of just leaning on that, you know, Yanaway, I'll say first, and bringing me into that, it's like, well, let's just put our actions where our complaints are. I think Bloom ultimately, it held space for that initial attempt to bring more women of color to WoW, but to make Bloom happen, this is what makes WoW so beautiful and so wonderful, is that it was a huge cast and crew. and it was all women of color. With Lomo, I think they did that sound though. It was a mixed crowd, but it was mostly women of color.
I feel like WOW gives. WOW gives you a place, WOW gives you a purpose, WOW gives you an education, WOW gives you an opportunity to decide what it is you want to say. Like, oh shit, I'm given a platform, what the fuck? It gives you a place to hone your voice, to hone your skills. I mean, it's priceless.
We really, from the beginning, got to make the work we wanted to make. So if you're going to make the work you want to make, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, what is my desire?
It was something amazing that across the accents and the languages and where you came from and how you grew up, there was this connection. It made our lives huge.
You were desiring a place. You were desiring the world know you, to see you. The way you desire, the weird fetishes that make up you exist, and you want that to be known. So